June 1940, Aldershot, England. The air smells of oil and wet canvas. A single man stands on the parade ground, watching his own tanks roll past, not with pride, but bitterness. Major General Percy Stanley Hobart, once one of the Royal Armoured Corps' brightest minds, has just been forced into early retirement. His offense? Thinking too far ahead. The British Army of 1940 does not like innovators. It prefers discipline to imagination, obedience to invention. Hobart, with his sharp tongue and sharper mind, is everything the establishment hates. When he warned that the next war would be fought with fast-moving armored divisions, that Britain needed new tactics, new machines, and new minds, they called him a nuisance. When his theories proved right during Germany's blitzkrieg through France, they called him unmanageable. Now, as the evacuation at Dunkirk unfolds, Hobart is tending his garden in disgrace, dismissed from active service. Neighbors in the quiet village of Chipping-Campden see him trimming hedges in uniform trousers. None of them know that this man, this eccentric, stubborn engineer, will one day help decide the fate of Europe. But first, someone has to bring him back. It happens almost by accident. General Sir Alan Brooke, now Chief of the Imperial General Staff, remembers the man's brilliance and his temper. Brooke visits him in person, walking through the rose bushes to find Hobart with mud on his boots and a spade in his hand. "Percy," Brooke says quietly, "we're going to need every mad idea you ever had." Hobart blinks, half in disbelief. "Even the bad ones?" "Especially the bad ones," Brooke replies. And just like that, the misfit general is back. But not to command a division, not yet. He's tasked with something stranger, to train the 11th Armored Division from scratch, a ragtag group of recruits and outdated tanks. To Hobart, it's not punishment. It's a laboratory. Inside that lab, he begins sketching designs. Tanks that swim, tanks that bridge rivers, tanks that throw fire. To his officers, it sounds like lunacy. To Hobart, it's necessity. War, he tells them, is the only test where the impossible becomes the ordinary. By 1943, his obsession will collide with destiny and the beaches of Normandy. February 1943, Bovington Camp, Dorset. The hangar doors groan open, and cold light spills across a row of tanks that look wrong. Their armor is heavy, their frames cluttered with strange contraptions, flails, ramps, rollers, even flamethrowers. The soldiers watching exchange nervous laughs. One mutters, "Looks like the general's gone barmy again." At the center of it all stands Percy Hobart, coat unbuttoned, eyes alive. He claps his hands. "Gentlemen, these are not toys. These are the keys to Europe." The British Army had learned its lessons the hard way. From Dieppe, where tanks sank in the surf, bogged down on shingle, or were shredded by German guns before reaching the seawall. That raid, a disaster in 1942, haunted Allied planners. Hobart studied every photograph from that beach and realized one thing. Standard tanks were useless in an amphibious assault. He needed machines that could do the unthinkable. So, he began modifying the Churchill, a reliable, plodding tank with thick armor and a steady engine. He saw it not as a machine, but as a foundation. From that foundation, he would build miracles. The first was the Churchill AVREs, Armored Vehicle Royal Engineers. Its cannon replaced by a 290mm spigot mortar called the petard. Capable of hurling a 40-pound explosive charge, the flying dustbin, straight into enemy bunkers. It could demolish concrete walls from 50 yards. Then came the Churchill Crocodile, a monster that breathed fire. Hobart had seen footage of early flamethrowers, clumsy, handheld death traps, and decided to give fire a vehicle. The Crocodile carried 400 gallons of thickened fuel in a towed trailer, shooting flames over 100 yards. It was terror incarnate for any German hiding behind a wall. But Hobart didn't stop. He created the Churchill armored ramp carrier. He took off its turret and replaced it with ramps, turning the tank itself into a bridge. Vehicles could drive straight up its back and over it. Soldiers called it a self-sacrificing tank. And then there were the flail tanks, the most absurd of all. Chains dangled from rotating drums in front, beating the ground as the tank advanced. When those chains struck mines, they exploded harmlessly in front of the vehicle. Engineers said it wouldn't work. Hobart made it work. He laughed as the first flail tank detonated a minefield safely in seconds. "Gentlemen," he said over the ringing in his ears, "it seems absurdity is the mother of survival." The troops started calling them Hobart's Funnies. At first, the nickname was mocking. Later, it would be reverent. By summer 1943, his armored zoo was ready for demonstration. British generals, skeptical as ever, gathered behind a wire fence at Bovington as Hobart's team rolled out each prototype. The Crocodile roared fire downrange. The AVRE obliterated a mock bunker. The flail danced through mines like a mechanical beast. The silence that followed wasn't laughter. It was awe. Still, Hobart's inventions were far from guaranteed a place in Operation Overlord. Many in the Allied command, including some Americans, thought they were too specialized, too British, too eccentric. But General Montgomery, who had once served under Hobart, believed in him. "Give me Hobart's toys," Monty said, "and I'll get you your beaches." That vote of confidence changed everything. Soon, hundreds of Churchill and Sherman variants were being rebuilt in secret workshops across Britain. Factories that once produced buses and tractors were now welding bridge layers, flame jets, and floating skirts. The engineers joked that Britain had gone mad. But this madness had purpose. Hobart was seen walking between workshops, coat flapping in the rain, muttering to himself, "Every nut, every weld. Someone's life depends on it." In the months ahead, those lives would number in the thousands. Men who would ride ashore on the morning of June 6, 1944. And when they did, Hobart's Funnies would lead the way. May 1944. Portsmouth Harbor. The docks are alive with noise. Engines rumble, cranes creak, and gulls scream above the gray water. Beneath a low, cold sky, hundreds of armored vehicles wait in rows. Steel beasts cloaked under tarps, each one humming faintly like it can already smell the salt of Normandy. Colonel Bill Symes walks down the line, clipboard in hand, shouting over the din. "Check your seals, check your flails. The next time these beasts touch land, it'll be in France." Beside him, Percy Hobart watches in silence. His face is hard to read, pride perhaps, mixed with the terror of a man who knows that ideas only matter if they survive the first hour of combat. Around them, the 79th Armoured Division, Hobart's own creation, prepares for the greatest amphibious invasion in history. Each regiment specializes in one of his funnies. The 22nd Dragoons man the flail tanks. The 1st Assault Brigade Royal Engineers handle the AVREs. The 141st Regiment RAC, the Buffs, operate the Crocodiles. Every man has trained not just to fight, but to build, to bridge, to clear, to burn. Their job is not to kill the enemy, but to make sure everyone else can reach him. In briefings, Hobart stands before his men and tells them the truth. "Gentlemen, D-Day will be hell. You will land first. You will make the path. And if you fail, the beaches will run red before the second wave even arrives. No one speaks. He looks at them all, then adds quietly, "But you won't fail. Because these machines were built by madmen, and you are the only men mad enough to use them." Laughter breaks the tension, but only barely. In the final days before launch, Hobart's inventions are distributed among the assault units. The British and Canadians receive the full array: Crocodiles, AVREs, arcs, and flails. The Americans, cautious and skeptical, take only a handful of modified Shermans, preferring their standard armor. Hobart argues with Eisenhower's staff, begging them to adopt more Funnies. "You'll regret this," he warns. "Your men will face the same walls we've already solved." The Americans nod politely. They don't listen. At night, Hobart walks alone through the camp. Sparks from welding torches dance in the air like fireflies. He hears the faint hiss of the channel wind against canvas. Somewhere, a soldier plays a harmonica. For the first time in months, Hobart allows himself a thought he never admits aloud. What if they fail? He knows too much about failure. He's lived it once before. He can't stand to live it again. On June 4th, the invasion is delayed by weather. Gales tearing across the channel, rain hammering the ships. Men curse and pray in equal measure. But on June 5th, a gap opens in the storm. The word passes down through every regiment, every harbor, every hidden camp. We sail tonight. Hobart watches his tanks load onto landing craft. Each one seems alive, grease-stained, clanking, trembling under its own weight. A Crocodile crew waves from the deck, one man shouting, "See you in France, sir." Hobart raises his hand, forcing a smile. "You'd better. I built those monsters for you." The vessels pull away slowly, engines coughing smoke into the dawn. Hobart stands on the quay long after they vanish into the gray horizon. Behind him, an officer approaches. "You should rest, sir." "I will," Hobart says, still staring out to sea. After they land. At 6:25 the next morning, the beaches of Normandy will erupt, and the world will finally see what madness can build. June 6th, 1944. Sword Beach, Normandy. Dawn breaks over the gray channel like the lid of hell lifting. The sea is thick with landing craft, the air with smoke, tracer fire, and the roars of engines. The first waves of men, the 3rd British Infantry Division and the 27th Armoured Brigade, push toward a horizon that flashes with explosions. And leading them are the Funnies. On the decks of their LCAs, the Churchill AVREs groan under the weight of steel ramps, fascines, and petard mortars. Water lashes against their hulls. Inside one, Sergeant Major William Latham clenches the grip of the petard's firing lever. The blast doors rattle with each artillery impact. "Hold steady," someone shouts. Latham mutters, "Steady? In this bloody washing machine?" Then, clang. The ramp drops. Seawater floods in. Engines roar, treads bite sand, and the tanks crawl forward into chaos. The first AVRE hits a sandbar, hesitates, then lurches free, its gun already loading the massive flying dustbin. Ahead looms a concrete bunker, one of the Atlantic Wall's casemates, spitting machine gun fire like a dragon's mouth. Range, 50 yards. Fire! The petard coughs, a dull thunk, followed by a gut-deep whump as 40 pounds of high explosive flatten the bunker's front like paper. The men following behind cheer. For the first time, someone has silenced the wall. A few hundred meters to the east, flail tanks begin their dance of madness. Sherman Crabs, with spinning drums, lash the sand with whipping chains. Mines burst in violent sprays of dirt and smoke. To the untrained eye, it looks insane. Tanks whipping the earth apart while advancing under fire. But to the engineers watching from the surf, it's poetry in motion. One operator, Lieutenant Frank Taylor, later recalled, "Every step forward could have been our last. But the flail beat the beach clean, and behind us, the infantry could finally run." Further inland, the crocodiles crawl up the dunes, their nozzles swiveling toward German strongpoints. From their towed trailers, thickened fuel is pumped into flame under pressure. Then, ignition. A river of fire arcs across the beach. German troops inside the pillboxes scream as heat and smoke rush in. The fire doesn't just destroy, it terrifies. In seconds, resistance collapses. Those who surrender come out trembling, hands high, faces black with soot. One British corporal mutters as he passes, "The devil himself rides a Churchill today." By odorate Wasser, the impossible has happened. The British and Canadian sectors, Sword, Juno, and Gold, have breached the Atlantic Wall. Engineers are laying bridges over craters, AVREs are filling anti-tank ditches with fascines, and supply trucks are rolling ashore. Behind them, Monty's radio operators report back to Portsmouth. Funnies successful. Repeat, Funnies successful. Beaches secured. Miles west, at Omaha Beach, it's another story. The Americans, having rejected most of Hobart's designs, face slaughter. Tanks sink in deep water, mines claim landing craft, men are pinned down for hours. The difference is brutal, and Hobart's warning echoes like a ghost. You'll regret this. That evening, as the last smoke drifts over Normandy, reports begin to filter back across the channel. Hobart listens in silence as the coded messages arrive. Crocodiles effective. AVREs essential. Flails clearing routes as planned. He says nothing for a long time. Then finally he exhales and murmurs, "Good lads. Every one of them." He doesn't sleep that night. None of them do. But by dawn, the impossible wall Hitler built along the coast of France has cracked, shattered not just by force, but by imagination. The misfit general's madness has changed the course of the war. June 10th, 1944. Normandy, France. 4 days after D-Day, the beaches no longer roar, they hum. Bulldozers, supply trucks, cranes. Wounded men carried past heaps of wrecked vehicles. The sea glitters with oil slicks and torn metal. Among them, half buried in sand, lie the skeletons of Hobart's Funnies. A Churchill AVREs, its turret blackened, sits nose deep in a shell crater. A Crocodile's trailer lies twisted, empty of fuel. But their destruction is not failure. It's proof. They did what they were built to do. From a landing craft now serving as a command post, General Montgomery sends a cable back to England. Hobart's devices, invaluable. Recommend full commendation. Results speak for themselves. And in a small office in Whitehall, a clerk types a note. General Hobart to be recommended for honors. But Hobart isn't there to read it. He's already in France. He arrives on the 12th, rain still falling, smoke still rising. His boots sink into the wet sand of Sword Beach as he surveys the wreckage. Officers salute him, but he barely notices. His gaze moves from the twisted hulls to the horizon, where the flat farmland of Normandy stretches toward Caen. Everywhere he looks, he sees the proof of his designs. A flail tank still sits by the minefield it cleared, chains broken, turret cracked open. An arc bridge rests across an anti-tank ditch, a line of Shermans rolling over it one after another. A petard blast has blown a perfect hole through a German bunker. He kneels beside a fallen sapper, helmet dented, face calm. A note is still pinned to the man's chest pocket. "For Hobart, you're funny worked." For a moment, the general just stares at it. Then he takes off his cap and bows his head. Weeks later, as the Allies push inland toward Caen, Hobart's creations evolve again. Engineers in the field adapt his designs to new problems. AVREs lay bridges over canals. Crocodiles clear woods where snipers hide. When the British attack the city of Caen in Operation Charnwood, Hobart's tanks lead again, belching flame through rubble, smashing barricades. The men have stopped calling them Funnies. Now, they just call them Hobarts. American observers, seeing them in action, finally understand. At Utah Beach, U.S. engineers request flails for mine clearing and crocodiles for assaulting fortified positions. Too late for Omaha, but not too late for the war. The designs spread. By the time the Allies reached Germany in 1945, the idea of a specialized armored vehicle is doctrine. Flame tanks, engineer tanks, bridge layers, they become standard tools of modern warfare. Back in Britain, the newspapers barely mention Hobart. The headlines go to generals, not engineers. But within the ranks, his legend grows. In pubs from Dover to Dundee, veterans tell stories of the day the mad general's contraptions saved their lives. When the war ends, Hobart's 79th Armoured Division is quietly disbanded. Its vehicles are scrapped or sent to museums. But among those who served, the division's badge, a bull charging forward, becomes a symbol of something greater than machinery. The courage to think differently. In his later years, when asked if he considered himself a genius, Hobart would shake his head. "No," he'd say, "I just built what others were too sane to try." Today, Percy Hobart's Funnies are studied in military academies worldwide. The principles he proved on the sands of Normandy, adaptability, innovation under fire, the fusion of engineering and courage, remain at the heart of every modern army. Whenever a combat engineer bridges a river under fire, whenever a breaching vehicle clears a minefield for infantry to pass, whenever soldiers survive because someone, somewhere, dared to build something ridiculous. They walk, unknowingly, in the footsteps of Hobart's madness. On a quiet hillside near Chipping-Campden, there's a small stone that bears his name. It doesn't boast his rank or his medals. Just a single line, carved at his request. He built the tools that freed men to fight. And if you listen closely, on a windy morning, you can almost hear the clatter of tracks and the rattle of flails, the echo of machines born from scrap, built by a man who refused to be ordinary.